Well, my goodness, now we've got one of the co-founders, co-owners of Unrivaled once again telling players what to do involving their collective bargaining agreement status with the NBA. That just all sounds insane to me when it comes out of my mouth. Every time it comes out of my mouth that you have players that are vice presidents of the players union for one league owning a different.
So here's what nobody wants to talk about. The WNBA's real crisis wasn't about viewership numbers. That was just the opening act. What happened next was complete meltdown behind closed doors. Fear crept in, egos exploded, and the people who were supposed to be playing basketball suddenly thought they were running a corporate boardroom like some dysfunctional social media argument. Commands started flying around, fingers pointed in every direction, and then reality smacked everyone in the face. This wasn't going to be some feel-good turnaround tale. This became a complete financial disaster that everyone's pretending never happened. Keep watching because somehow this mess involving ghost towns for arenas, overnight sensations, and dramatic protest stunts became the ultimate lesson in how to negotiate your way straight into complete mayhem.
I have very strong opinions about the WNBA and about the negotiation that's going on. I'm terribly disappointed that there are people out there that are mistaking that for some sort of macho-ness or some sort of lack of empathy or care for women. Happen to love women more than I love men, so that ain't it. Misogyny? Nope. Just a business head, a business brain.
Here's where things get really twisted. Unrivaled swoops in with their co-founders and co-owners whispering advice to players about how they should handle these intense negotiations with both the NBA and WNBA. The conflict of interest isn't hiding in some dark corner either. It's practically screaming at the top of its lungs, while holding up a giant flashing billboard that reads absolutely nothing about this makes any sense whatsoever.
I'll share with you guys the most recent letter that was issued from the WNBPA. At midnight, the 2020 WNBA collective bargaining agreement will expire. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise in order to get a deal done, the WNBA and its teams have failed to meet us at the table with the same spirit and seriousness. Instead, they've remained committed to undervaluing player contributions, dismissing player concerns, and running out the clock. Today's display of an inflatable rat, a universal symbol of labor protest outside of...
Finally, the WNBA and NBA seem to have gotten tired of playing strategic games while everyone else keeps knocking over all the pieces. Rather than getting caught up in all the emotional drama and back-and-forth arguments, they grabbed the one weapon that actually works in any serious negotiation. Cold hard cash dropped right on the table where nobody could possibly miss it or pretend it wasn't there.
As we found out yesterday, I did a video. The NBA and WNBA, very smart. Very smart. We said... They came out, they said, you know what? We're under a moratorium here. Let's start sending out qualifying offers to free agents. Okay, now, they would have to do that under the current CBA in which the salaries hadn't been increased, this, that, and the other. But it could mean, maybe, that it would start getting people the idea of...
Listen, when they started sending out those qualifying offers under the current collective bargaining agreement, even with all this moratorium talk swirling around, the leagues basically sent a crystal clear message to everyone involved. Real money carries serious weight. It has actual gravity, and it has this amazing ability to sharpen people's focus in ways that no ridiculous inflatable protest theater could ever achieve.
Say something about the inflatable rat thing. So I actually got a photo from it. One of you guys shared it with me. It's in New York. The rat here, and it says, tell Kathy Engelbert and Adam Silver to get the CBA done. Without the players, there is no WNBA. Pay equity is not optional. It is earned, it is deserved, it is overdue. I feel like the players have lost sense of reality a little bit, because imagine putting up a rat that a lot of unions do when it comes to like...
Now, this strategy wasn't some sneaky plan to manipulate players into signing deals they absolutely didn't want. Because let's be honest, nobody actually thought that was going to work. The whole point was forcing everyone to snap out of their slogan-chanting trance and start thinking about actual paychecks again. Public support, which used to be completely on the side of players being these underpaid victims of cheap ownership, has done a complete 180 now that the real numbers are out in the open. Turns out, people's sympathy disappears pretty fast when they realize the salary increases being discussed, look more like hitting the jackpot than asking for a reasonable cost of living bump. The Players Association fired back with these demonstrations that feel way more like some last-minute college art project than any kind of serious labor movement, complete with giant inflatable rat decorations and those mobile electronic signs that look like they should be advertising cheap 4th of July fireworks in some strip mall parking lot.
You know, we don't really care about the WNBA, but sometimes it's nice to see things crash and burn.
So people thought Angel Reese was insane last year when she said, yeah, CBA's coming up, we deserve more. Cause I'm hearing if y'all don't give us what we want, we sitting out. What are you, crazy? Sit out and crush all the momentum from Caitlin Clark? Well, guess what? Just this week, W players voted yes on a strike. Not on strike yet, but it's officially on the table. Oh, and this was 98%.
Sure, these attention-grabbing stunts might rack up some social media engagement, but they're also making the whole cause look completely ridiculous. Especially when we're talking about a league that has literally never made a single dollar of profit and only exists because of subsidies, endless patience, and strategic partnerships instead of actually bringing in revenue. That awkward truth keeps getting conveniently left out of all the player speeches, even though pretty much every casual sports fan who barely pays attention to the league already knows this. The WNBA's money problems have been the worst-kept secret in professional sports for years, starting as quiet whispers that eventually became a punchline, and then turning into something everyone openly talked about during those rare moments when the league got major attention. Like when Brittany Griner got detained in Russia and suddenly thrust the league into international headlines. Those qualifying offers sent out under the existing CBA were never meant to get signed. And everybody knows that any contracts inked right now would be stuck with the old, outdated pay structures instead of the much bigger numbers currently being hammered out.
We experienced it. Look at the average finals ratings. Around 600K before Caitlin Clark, but her rookie year, 1.6 million viewers and she wasn't even involved. And right then, a new media rights deal was a perfect timing. They would get to cash in on this Caitlin Clark popularity. So the W signed a $2.2 billion deal to show their game starting in 2020.
They also brought up how Breanna Stewart, speaking from her leadership role in the Players Association, stressed that all the players understand signing anything too early would completely destroy their bargaining power, which honestly makes perfect sense, and nobody's arguing against that logic. But what gets really fascinating is how just having those offers sitting there forces players to imagine a world where financial security isn't some far-off fantasy, but an actual concrete option waiting for a signature. This is where the mind games start kicking in, because raw numbers have this sneaky way of creeping into your thoughts at 3 in the morning when all the rally chants stop echoing in your head. Jumping from making roughly $100,000 per year to potentially pulling in $500,000 or more isn't just some abstract concept. It's a complete life transformation that changes where you can live, what kind of stability you can build, and the type of future planning that most athletes who aren't superstars almost never get the chance to experience. The real squeeze is happening with the bench warmers and rotation players whose names never go viral online, but whose entire financial survival depends almost completely on league paychecks. For these players, the gap between current wages and what's being proposed is literally the difference between renting apartments forever and actually buying a house. Between barely getting by and building something that could last for generations.
Of the WNBA players, most, just 98% of them, think they're getting underpaid and underrepresented in their sport. That is just... None of them have the humility of understanding, oh, we're getting subsidized by the men and we have a sport that pays us $100,000 without having to do too much? Like... It's a privilege.
Here's what you never hear anyone admit though. And as these massive salary figures keep getting thrown around, the league quietly holds an ace that nobody wants to acknowledge out loud, which is this uncomfortable reality that the WNBA's current popularity boom is being driven mostly by players who are still on those cheap rookie deals. Most of the league's marketing appeal right now centers around young phenoms like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Ricky Jackson, Sonia Citron, Paige Buchers, and Aaliyah Boston, all of whom are either brand new to their professional careers or nowhere close to demanding those big veteran paychecks yet. If some hypothetical situation played out where all the veteran players walked away while rookies and replacement talent stepped up to fill those roster spots, the actual games and TV ratings might not take nearly the hit that some people want to believe. This isn't trying to disrespect anyone's skills or accomplishments, but it's just being honest about how audiences behave. because fans show up for exciting matchups, compelling storylines, and magnetic personalities. And a lot of what's currently driving viewership is already locked into contracts that won't be affected by this whole standoff. A Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bucher's showdown stays just as compelling regardless of which veteran role players decide to sit this out. And the league absolutely knows this, even though they'd rather not test that theory in front of everyone. So the bargaining power might not be as lopsided as the Players Association thinks, especially when the financial damage from a long drawn-out fight hits hardest on the people who have the least money saved up.
Let's get into it. For one, not a work stoppage, at least not yet. Under the status quo, the working conditions of the current CBA would be maintained, and the league and union can continue negotiating. But because the CBA expired without a replacement and the agreement prohibits either side from engaging in a work stoppage, status quo opens the door for a strike initiated by the players or a lockout instituted by the owners. Sources told ESPN that the league has not been contemplating a lockout, but a strike has been considered.
The league's choice to push forward with qualifying offers under the current agreement wasn't some act of war. It was actually showing restraint, because it completely changed the conversation without making things ugly. Instead of hurling accusations back and forth, the league basically asked players to picture themselves walking down the street and seeing a massive pile of life-changing money sitting right there. And then think about whether it makes sense to step over it just to make a point. That mental image is pretty hard to forget once it gets stuck in your head, especially when the other option is more uncertainty in a league that already has major problems with how people perceive it and how it presents itself. Production value is still another huge issue nobody wants to discuss, because even while salaries and player rights get debated, the league's TV broadcasts sometimes look more like minor league coverage than polished professional entertainment. Reporters like Kendra Andrews and Alexa Philippou have broken down all the procedural details about moratorium discussions, free agency schedules, and core player designations, treating this whole situation like sophisticated business maneuvering instead of just total dysfunction. Their coverage makes it clear this isn't complete chaos, but calculated strategic moves, even when it looks like a complete mess from the outside. The league knows players aren't going to sign under the current CBA, but it also knows that putting actual money into the mental mix changes people's priorities in ways that passionate speeches never will.
I asked Nafisa Collier at this unrivaled event in the middle of the WNBA All-Star weekend what percentage they wanted, and we now finally found out what that was. It seems like this is getting contentious, but I guess to you, what's the percentage that you think gets this deal done?
Oh, I don't think Adam Silver has any interest in pegging it to a percentage at all. And Adam Silver addressed the media during the League Cup final in Vegas and said that he'll get involved if they want him to. But here's the surprise. He's been involved.
What makes this entire drama feel completely absurd is how personal and emotional everything has gotten when this should just be a straightforward business negotiation. Because labor talks rarely work out well when they're full of personal grudges and symbolic gestures that have nothing to do with financial reality. When players start framing this fight as payback for past wrongs, instead of planning for future security, it becomes really hard for ownership or fans to take any of the demands seriously, especially when the league's financial track record shows zero evidence that all this resentment actually matches up with economic facts. This idea that the WNBA could just shut down for weeks or months without any major consequences completely ignores how delicate momentum can be for a league that's still struggling to maintain consistent mainstream attention. Every postponed game, every stalled season plan, and every unresolved contract eats away at credibility, making it harder and harder to convince casual fans that this is must-see entertainment instead of just a curiosity. The owners have made their play by putting historic financial growth on the negotiating table, and now all the pressure shifts to players to explain why that's somehow not good enough. As more weeks go by and the reality of wasted opportunities starts sinking in, that collective determination might start cracking, not because players don't have strong beliefs, but because strong beliefs don't cover rent payments.
So the league not contemplating a lockout shows their good faith. The players saying, you know what, we're going to strike, shows the bad faith of the players. I think this is a good move for the owners, actually. They can kick their feet up, look good, and if the players want to strike, it's just a dash on the players. It's just a blast.
The real irony here is that pretty much everyone, even the critics, admitted the league's move was pretty brilliant, because it didn't make the conflict worse, and it didn't just dismiss what players were concerned about. Instead, it set up a situation where every single player has to privately think about what they're actually willing to give up and for exactly how long. For some players, especially those with major endorsement deals as backup, the answer might be forever. But for a lot of others, the math is way less forgiving. As these discussions keep dragging on and public commentary gets louder and louder, the distance between what people are saying and what's actually happening becomes impossible to ignore. The WNBA is sitting at this crossroads where it can either use its current spotlight to lock in financial stability or completely waste it through endless internal fighting that leaves everyone worse off in the end. All the shouted demands, the theatrical street performances, and the public grandstanding might create some temporary buzz, but buzz without actual solutions is just background noise. The league's quiet reminder that money speaks louder than symbolism might end up being the only voice that actually counts, especially when the final choice comes down to moving forward versus staying completely stuck.
But the biggest misunderstanding here is that the players in the WNBA want to have a pegged revenue number the way they have it in the NBA. And Adam Silver is saying no, because the NBA owners are saying no, because that's not taking into account all of the money that the WNBA owners need to profit and take off the table to pay down debt that has been accruing over the decades of losses. So that is why they're not having to meet.
That paralysis gets even more bizarre when you think about how unusual it is for any league in this situation to vulnerably stretch itself financially just to keep labor peace. Most professional sports organizations wait until they're actually making profits before they start throwing money around, rather than leading with generosity. The WNBA ownership groups are essentially placing a huge bet on future popularity, future media contracts, and future cultural impact by offering salaries that completely dwarf what the league has historically earned, which is the kind of risk that should normally get praised instead of attacked. Instead, the reaction has been like a bunch of people screaming about a house fire while standing right next to the fire department that's already there with all their equipment ready to go. The owners aren't negotiating against emotions or symbolism. They're dealing with actual numbers, real timelines, and long-term sustainability, which is exactly why constantly shifting toward abstract demands only makes the player's position weaker. The longer this whole thing drags out, the more obvious it becomes that the league's game plan depends on outlasting everyone, rather than having big confrontations. Because time itself benefits the side with more money and fewer immediate problems to worry about.
3 days is tough for sure. I am very confident that we will get a deal done.
So you've got one star saying that they're at a standstill, another one that's saying that they're confident. That tells me that nobody actually knows what's about to happen, and that is terrifying. Now here's where this gets real. Back in December, the players did something that's never happened in WNBA history. They voted to authorize a strike, and this wasn't some close vote either. 93% of eligible players participated, and 98% of them voted yes. 98%! That's...
Veteran players who don't have those major sponsorship deals are feeling more and more pressure as the off-season gets shorter and financial opportunities sit there completely unused while the league keeps making plans around rookies, replacement players, and long-term facility upgrades. This power shift happens quietly, without any big announcements, which might actually be the smartest approach possible. There's also this awkward silence around the fact that fans care way less about labor drama than insiders think they do. Because most people tune in for exciting basketball, memorable rivalries, and emerging stars rather than behind-the-scenes disputes. In the end, this whole saga feels like a masterclass in how quickly moral certainty falls apart when it runs headfirst into economic complexity. Because good intentions don't magically fix budget problems. The league has presented an offer that would completely revolutionize financial standards in women's professional basketball, and the longer it sits there untouched, the more bizarre this standoff looks. Eventually, this conversation has to get back to actual results instead of just looking good, because symbolism doesn't build new arenas, keep franchises stable, or guarantee long-term career security. When people look back at this moment years from now, they probably won't focus on who yelled the loudest, or put on the most creative street theater, but on who figured out that real progress usually shows up quietly, disguised as some boring financial spreadsheet rather than a triumphant victory celebration. The money is sitting right there, the future is being written, and the only question left is how long anyone wants to keep pretending none of this is real.